I'm Nazim Awan, co-founder and director of Holy Land Dates Limited. My wife and I set up the business in 2016 to support Palestinian trade. Our objective was twofold. One, to support Palestinian trade by buying Palestinian products, and two, to ensure that we donate a minimum of 50% of our net profits back to support Palestinian causes or other causes. Although both my wife and I have different day jobs, she's a doctor and I'm a lawyer, it's through those professions we've been allowed to continue Holy Land Dates. It's something we enjoy, something we have huge passion about, and something we encourage everybody to get involved in. Support Palestine.
Why Palestinian dates?
I think the important thing is to ensure if you want to buy Palestinian dates, then you're supporting not just the date farmers, you're supporting a much wider position, because Palestine relies upon its date exports. And countries like the UK, who consume a large number of dates, by buying those dates, you're immediately supporting the Palestinian farmers. By supporting them, you support their families. By supporting them, you support the land that the dates are grown upon. So it's something that's very important to the Palestinian farmers and important to us as a company.
Can you tell us a bit about the history of date farming in Palestine?
I'm not a historian and I'm not the expert on this. However, it's relatively new. From what I understand, speaking to the date farmers and to the packing houses in Palestine, it's around 30, 40 years old. The dates themselves, or the knowledge, came from the US and then transferred across into Israel and then Palestine. So 3 to 4 decades old.
How do we know that Palestinian dates are truly ethically sourced / truly Palestinian dates?
This is a very difficult one because there are many people, companies that will say the dates they supply are Palestinian. I have seen in the 10 years I've been supplying Palestinian dates, the growth in the number of labels providing Palestinian dates. I have concerns because I can't imagine that many dates are coming out of Palestine. It is very hard. I say the first thing is you have to go with trusted brands. You should ask questions of the owners of those brands, so whoever they may be. Thirdly, if you're to ask me about the dates I supply, I would be happy to share documentation that proves the origin of those dates. So there are, I suppose, 2 documents that can support that contention. One is, of course, the commercial invoice with the relevant sensitive data redacted. And the second one would be the EORI certificate, which refers to goods coming from Palestine, in this instance, into the UK. And that's a document which has to be disclosed at the time the goods are being sent from Palestine to the UK. So I think that's a starter. And if people are willing to provide those 2 documents, redacted, as I say, with the sensitive information, then maybe that builds the stepping stone towards trust. And then the second stage and phase has to be, sit down with people, sit down with the owners and ask them the questions. And if you genuinely are passionate about Palestinian dates or Palestinian products, take the time. And the owners, like myself, should be available. You could ask, in my team, you could ask any one of my team about the origin of the dates. Because I think, if not all of them, all of them bar one have been to Palestine. All of them bar one have been to the place we buy our dates from. All of them bar one have met the owners of the date farms. The reason I say bar one is because a new sister joined us in January of last year, or February of last year, and we haven't been back to Palestine since then as a group. I've been alone, but not as a group. So I think it's really important. Drill down on the information. We're happy to do it when we're buying other products. We'll do it here as well. And then when you walk away with that information, absorb it. If you need further questions, then go back and ask. You can do that with me at any time. I'm approachable. My contact number is available to anybody who wants to ask me. And I will provide as much information as possible to make you convinced that these are Palestinian. And that's about as far as I can take it. Then my last thing is this: come with us on a trip to Palestine. So if you're asking me, as the owner of Holy Land Dates, I take tour groups to Palestine. So come with me. You visit the date farms, the packing house. You can see it with your own eyes and ask the questions yourself. So instead of saying, oh, Nazim told me or so-and-so told me, say, oh, I went myself and I spoke to whoever it may be. So I think these are important ways to understand that these dates are genuinely Palestinian. And you will feel that when you speak to people who do Palestinian products, the passion behind it. And hopefully that comes across when you speak to me. I know around 3, 4 or 5 years ago, there were many issues raised around certain packing houses that were providing both Palestinian and Israeli dates. And it was becoming complicated to understand which was Palestinian and which was Israeli. So this took place several years ago. This is something I suppose the Palestinian farmers and the packing houses need to resolve amongst themselves, what they do and how they do it. Because sadly, as forensic as you want to be, you can't be there on the day the dates are being harvested. It's a 2 or 3 month process starting around August or September of each year. You can't be there to watch your dates come off the tree from the farm, to go all the way to the packing house to be prepared, to be packed and placed into a box and then shipped to you. It's inconceivable that anybody could have that time to do that. So I think there has to be a lot of honesty and trust in this process, and it's important that we follow through on the transparency route. So I can't tell you what the Palestinians should do or how they should do it, but I can tell you what we should be doing here. And that kind of repeats what I've just said, which is ensuring that you challenge the owners of these companies in a fair-minded way to give them a chance to respond to your questions, to show that, yes, this is Palestinian, and this is what we say, and this is why we say it's Palestinian.
Is there any difference between Palestinian dates and Israeli dates, i.e. in taste, quality, farming methods?
So maybe take it in reverse order. Farming methods, most definitely. The biggest tool or biggest asset for dates is water. Water flows freely to many of the Israeli farms, whereas less freely to the Palestinian farms. It's one of the points that many human rights groups have referred to and farming organisations about the way water is a scarce resource, particularly in Jericho. Scarce resource for the inhabitants makes it even more scarce for the trees that need it for the dates to be come to season. So yes, there's a difference in farming methods. From what I understand, just on reading around the subject matter, the Israelis have some of the most up-to-date equipment. The vast majority of equipment used by packing houses when sorting and cleaning dates comes from Italy. And the Israeli companies will tend to have the leading technology. And once that's coming towards its end of its shelf life, it's then purchased by Palestinian farmers. So I suppose one of the ways is to try and ensure that the farming equipment, the machinery, is the best that money can buy, to give you that added edge. So for example, when you're sorting dates, if your machine only sorts 4 tons a day, but some of the other machines that the companies are using sort 7 or 8 tons an hour, then it gives you an idea that when you're talking about cost for labor, what can be produced in one day by an old machine compared to a new machine is significantly different. So that definitely, farming methods, the machinery used is a definite impact. Secondly, for many years, the Israeli government have given subsidies to Israeli farmers. They've also helped with discounts or refunds or reimbursements on tariffs when goods are being sent, for example, into the EU. So these are significant. And these features of investment, either by allowing Israeli farmers to spend less and gain more because the Israeli government will support them, is a significant feature. And you can find within that process, I would guesstimate that Israeli dates are around 25 or 30% cheaper than Palestinian dates. So farming methods, cost of labor becomes cheaper for the Israeli farmers because they can farm better, more efficiently compared to the Palestinian farmers. But mashallah, credit where it's due. Many of the Palestinian farmers that I know, or the packing houses that I know, are now investing in that equipment. It's expensive, to try and be more economical and more profitable so that they can produce more dates. So farming is one of the things. So water and machinery most definitely combined with labor. Then I suppose taste, I don't know. I've never tasted Israeli dates, so I don't know. I'm not a connoisseur of dates in any event. I'm sure if you put 2 dates before me, one Israeli, one Palestinian, maybe several, Jordanian and Moroccan and South African and American, I probably wouldn't know the taste. I own a date company, but I'm not a connoisseur of dates. So I couldn't tell you about the difference in taste amongst any of these medjool dates. As far as dates themselves are concerned, I've talked about the price, the farming methods, and the taste itself. There's not much I could say about it, I'm afraid. Quality, I would say, because of the farming methods used, that you tend to find, if you could put a box next to each other of Palestinian dates and Israeli dates, both at top quality, the Israeli dates aesthetically certainly look better. And maybe again, that's down to the way they're farmed, the use of the water, having water to fulfill what the trees need in order to grow and get the plants and get the dates to fruition. And they must have a big impact. So yes, I mean, I think even aesthetics, they look different.
Export numbers. How many Palestinian dates get exported per year? What are the revenues it brings to the Palestinians?
Farming for the Palestinians of dates is the bedrock of the community. Not just because it gives financial support to so many people in the family, because you'll find traditionally on the farms, it's a very male-orientated profession, so you'll find the farmer will do the farming along with his children. So it's very much a family-run business. It helps, no doubt, to keep costs down. So insofar as what the benefits of farming is here, or Palestinian dates, it not just provides financial sustenance to the farmers, to the packing house and the people who work there, but critically also works the land that they're on. I'm not a politician, but we all recognise, as the British government have said many times, that it's referred to as the occupied Palestinian territories, because a lot of the land, particularly Area C, where the dates come from, which is Jericho, is run by Israel. And I think either 90% or 100% Israeli run. So the military, the police, which makes it very challenging for Palestinians within there. So going within Jericho itself and out of Jericho can be challenging, and very challenging for many, many Palestinians. So yes, it's difficult, yes, it's challenging, yes, there are these challenges in place, but providing and supporting Palestinian farmers not just gives them an income, but it also helps them to sustain and keep their land.
Buying Palestinian dates, products and produce as a support for pro-Palestinian activism, does it help?
There's no doubt. You know, the whatever cause you want to support, if you buy those products, whatever that may be, then of course it will support it. You may or may not know, I've made mention of it, I'm a big Manchester City supporter. I've been a season ticket holder for many years. If I buy products that have Manchester City emblems on them, of course it supports Manchester City as a football club. So by default, whichever organisation, whichever love you have, if you buy that product, that source, from that origin, then of course naturally you'll support them. So yes, it must be helpful. And I think as well that what resonates around the world is that for many of the Palestinian people who live in occupation at the moment, when they see their products being eaten around the world, then naturally it will make them happy. So, and I think that's very important because you want to lift morale wherever you can. So there are many aspects to supporting Palestinian causes through activism, and one of them is by Palestinian products.
What is Holy Land Dates and why does it exist?
Holy Land Dates, company set up in 2016 by my wife and I. We're the two co-founders of Holy Land Dates. It was set up, I suppose, as a hobby, as a passion. We went on our first trip to Palestine in 2014, and we felt like we wanted to do something. And there are, mashallah, many organisations doing great work in Palestine and outside of Palestine to support Palestine. And many charities doing great work in supporting Palestinian causes. We wanted to support business as well as providing aid. And we thought, well, how can we do both of those things in one go? Buy products and donate, as we do, 50% of our net profits back to supporting causes, whether it's Palestinian or other causes. So that's what we wanted to do, and that's what Holy Land Dates was about, to try and provide that support to Palestinian trade. So although it says Holy Land Dates, it's not just dates we do a variety of products from Palestine. We do oils, we do soaps, we do za'atar, and more recently we started doing frames from Palestine, mother of pearl frames. So for us it's all about buying Palestinian products to support Palestine. And from a hobby that started in our kitchen in 2016, it's grown into a successful business and enterprise that now employs several people, and it's something we really enjoy. Although my wife and I have our day jobs, my wife's a consultant at a hospital, I'm a lawyer, we've tried to maintain a balance as best as we can. Often Holy Land Dates takes over everything. So it is a challenge, we love it, we enjoy it, and we're trying to make it a better place to work and a better way and better organised. So Holy Land Dates sits there, I suppose, to ensure that there's transparency. So we're very clear in our processes. First of all, we're clear in how much we give back as a percentage. Secondly, we tell you on each box of dates, for example, and this is what we try and implore other date providers to do. Be clear on what your product is. Is it grade 1? Is it grade 2? Is it grade 3? What size of date is it? So for example, on our box, we'll tell you the size of the date on the side. This is a large box of dates. We'll tell you whether it's grade 1 or grade 2 through the classification. This is a premium. Premium's grade 1. You go on our website, there's an FAQ section. It tells you premium's grade 1, classic is grade 2. There are many date providers that we've been trying to encourage to do the same so that the consumer gets a fair deal. That's what this is about. If you want to compare apples with apples, then compare apples with apples. Take a large 900 gram class 1 box of dates and compare it to another provider, large 901 class 1 box of dates. And then you have your direct comparison. And that's important. So we're trying to encourage others to do the same. And I think for the consumer, that can only be beneficial for the consumer. So Holy Land Dates exists to try and bring transparency to the world of Palestinian dates and oils and other products, and also to try and support Palestinian trade, which is why I mentioned very briefly about the mother of pearl frames that we do. Why? Because again, we want to support Palestinian trade, which right now, because of the ongoing massacre, is really struggling. So if there ever was a time to get involved and support Palestinian trade, surely now must be that.
Are authorities making life more difficult for Palestinian date farms?
Yes, there's no doubt, because of course, within Area C, Jericho, controlled by the Israeli authorities, there's a lot of land grab taking place. So naturally it becomes more challenging for the farmers, which is a reason why it's very important to buy Palestinian products. Because so long as the farmers can farm the Palestinian land and they're on there working, there's less chance the land will be taken. And of course then this must support the Palestinians if we do that. So yes, it's very important. Is it becoming more challenging? There's no doubt about it. I've been to Jericho, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 times. And I've seen the erosion of land in the time I've been going, which is only in a decade. And when you speak to the Palestinian farmers and you see with your own eyes how land has changed from ownership of Palestinians to ownership by Israelis, they're certainly making it more and more challenging.
What can those outside of Palestine do to support Palestinians, especially Palestinian farmers?
Buy Palestinian products, travel to Palestine, ensure what you're buying is Palestinian, ask questions of the people who sell them here to ensure that they come from Palestine. And most importantly, if you want to support Palestine, then go there. There's a real need for people to travel to Palestine. It is far safer than some of the headlines that we hear. I think I've mentioned to you, I've been going since 2014. My children in 2014, so my youngest son then would have been around 10 years old, 11 years old. My oldest son would have been 10 or 11 years old. My youngest would have been about 6 or 7 years old. And I wouldn't take my children into an area where I felt there was going to be danger to them. As a tour group leader, I wouldn't take people to areas where there's going to be danger to them. So it is very important, not just support here, but go there and support. Because when you go there, you support the Palestinian economy. You support the Palestinian people. You'll meet them. You'll find the welcome that you receive is probably second to none from the Palestinians. I don't think in all the places I've traveled to, the hospitality and the warmth of Palestine can be replicated anywhere. And that is testament to the people who live there through oppression, through occupation, but still, when you go there, there's a plate of food waiting for you. There's a cup of tea waiting for you, or a cup of coffee. That it really is that hospitality is second to none.
How much do Palestinian farmers make?
I can tell you that the way we have a genetic exercise is that from the box of dates that I showed you earlier, from that box of dates, around 30% will go to the farmers, around 30% to the packing houses, roughly, and then 30% to the rest of the team that's involved in the date production. So it gives you a rough idea. But the cost involved, the capital cost for farmers is huge. Water irrigation systems, the wells that we talk about, because it's so important, it's expensive. The machinery is expensive. So I don't know how that impacts and how it works out for them, but it is a costly exercise.
Do Palestinians in general, or more specifically Palestinian farmers, understand the support they have across the world?
The Palestinian farmers may not necessarily see the support because of this division often between farmers and packing houses. There are many packing houses in Palestine that own farms, but there are also farmers who are not part of packing houses. In other words, that they are separate entities. So the farmers themselves may not see it because they'll be providing the product to the packing house. The packing house certainly will see it because they will be packing the dates into branded boxes. They'll be going off all around the world. So certainly they'll see the support that they get, and they'll know year on year how much they give to the UK, how much they give to Europe and beyond, etc. So yeah, definitely I think they see it. It's important for them. It gives them support and reassurance.
What can we all do to better promote them and their produce?
Ensure that you buy Palestinian products. If you want to promote Palestine, then ensure it's Palestinian. But how do you do that? By asking questions of owners of businesses, like me. making sure that you're happy with the answers, making sure that when you're not happy, you ask further questions and get to that stage where you feel content with the information you've got. There's only so far you can go with a string of questions because everything can almost have a what if, a what if, what if. So you have to get to a stage where you're content. So that's my advice. If you want to support Palestine, if you want to ensure what you're doing is supporting Palestinian farmers or Palestinian trade, then ensure what you're buying is Palestinian by asking the relevant questions.
In the past 5 years alone, there's been a boom in Palestinian dates being sold in the UK. Do you feel that this is truly Palestinian dates, or do you feel like Israeli companies are cashing in on this as well?
I'm confident that they're not all Palestinian dates. The reason I say that is because over the years, and if not in the 5 years, 7, 8 years, I'm aware when people send me a WhatsApp picture of a brand of dates that's Palestinian, if I send it to the packing houses who then send it to the other packing houses, as I said, I think there's around 20 packing houses in Palestine, it isn't difficult to work out whether they're Palestinian or not. And often the answers were that these are not Palestinian. So there's certainly a rise in people or companies suggesting certain dates are Palestinian because there's a rise in demand for Palestinian products, which is why it feeds into this, sadly, corrupt behavior, where people want to sell something as Palestinian when it clearly isn't. So yes, I think there's a definite rise in it. And can I say within that as well, there's a huge responsibility of organizations here because it comes down to making sure that what you put on the tin or the box or whatever it is that you sell your products in is true. Make it as transparent as possible. If you're selling dates in a tin, then tell people. Don't use clever words so that you put the name of a project on there so that it sounds like they're from Palestine. Say, there's no shame in saying where the dates are from. In fact, that's transparent and honest. Allow the consumer to choose. So if I say my dates are from Palestine, I should say that. But if they're from another country, then I should be equally clear in saying they're from an other country. And that's incumbent upon many organizations to make sure they say that. And this is a big part of what I'm trying to encourage people to do. Be transparent, just so that message is clear. So this is not just, for example, Israeli companies selling Israeli dates under the guise of Palestinian. These are many other organizations selling dates and just using a clever turn of words to infer that they're Palestinian, and they're not. I think it's very important that the whole purpose of this is to try and get the message across that if you want to support Palestine, then support Palestine. If that's what you're about, then ask questions, get transparency. But it means people like me have to be more transparent. And if people like me are transparent, then maybe that information gets across. So for example, there are many, sadly, organizations who just don't want to come to that same playing field and be on that same level because they have their own reasons why they don't want to do that. Look, in this country, there are many Muslim charities who sell dates, but I don't know if many of them genuinely ask the questions that need to be asked. In other words, go to the true origins of understanding where the dates come from. So it's important for me as a Muslim, when I'm opening my fast, to ensure that the date I'm using is the date I want it to be from. So if I want it to be from Palestine, I've got to ensure it's from Palestine. That's the decision I make. That should be for others as well. You know, you should follow this process through. Look, date farming in Palestine is really challenging. One of the challenges is water, as I described earlier. It's a very scarce resource because, of course, of the way the Israeli government control supply into Jericho, into the whole of the West Bank, but particularly into Jericho. So it is important to understand that in order to make things better for the Palestinians, we as people who want to support Palestinian causes and Palestinian trade should make sure that we do a lot more. And it's not just shouting and screaming about it. That may have its place in society, but importantly, it's by showing genuine support. As I mentioned earlier, go there, speak to people, speak to farmers, see how this industry really works. It isn't just a question of you get your box of dates from a supermarket or online, and there they are. There's a real effort that goes into this, and it's real hard work. And if you can, try and travel there around September, October, and witness the hard season that takes place. Remember, Jericho is the lowest city below the sea. So when you travel to Jericho, the temperatures reach 50, 60 degrees centigrade. or certainly 40 to 50, if not 50 plus. It is extremely hot. These are the conditions the farmers are working in. So it is really important to understand and recognize. On a trip that I went to, they asked me to climb a ladder. I mean, I'm not getting into health and safety here, to climb a ladder up I don't know, it's like a 30, 40 foot tree. And I was looking at it thinking, first of all, I wouldn't climb the ladder. But secondly, the heat. In the 3 or 4 minutes I'd been stood there, you were dripping in sweat. These are the conditions that the farmers are working under. So recognize that. So when people here in the UK, how often I hear the point, oh, the following dates are much cheaper. I'm not saying they're not. Palestinian dates are not cheap, they're expensive. For reasons I've already highlighted, the cost of farming is expensive. The cost of equipment is expensive. So these are the difficulties they have to face. And sadly, the Palestinian farmers, certainly as I understood it 2 to 3 years ago, that information may have changed now, don't get any support from the Palestinian Authority, from the Palestinian government. So if they're not getting support from the governing body, then of course they have to do it themselves. And that is also a challenge. Now I know the Palestinian Authority are trying to invest better into farming and agriculture because it's the backbone of society, it's the backbone of business. And I'm sure that will come, but it takes time and it requires a lot of patience from people as well, which is why we should be supporting Palestinian causes. If you want to buy Palestinian dates, then support the cause. Buy them, ensure they're Palestinian.
We know that many Israeli farms employ Palestinians.
Yes.
Some could argue that by not buying Israeli produce, you are harming the livelihoods of Palestinians who otherwise would be jobless.
Yes.
What do you think of the statement?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a fact. Many of the staff who work on Israeli farms are Palestinian. That's a fact. They often get paid more to work on Israeli farms because the Israeli governments are handing out subsidies to the Israeli farmers so they can pass that down along the chain. So yes, I understand the reasoning behind why Palestinian farmers work there. Because if I were to say to you or to anybody and take a poll and say, you're being offered a job where you're being provided or offered more money, generally a lot of people will navigate or gravitate towards that. That might not be the ethical decision to make, but we don't always apply ethics when it comes to back pocket. Maybe we should and be more ethical and more concerned, but not everybody does. But I've spoken to many of the Palestinians who work on Israeli farms, and they will also say for them that we have a family to support. So if we go and work for the Israeli farms, as far as we are concerned, we're doing our bit by providing for our family. So it's a difficult challenge. I can sit here in England and say, I wish the Palestinians didn't work on the Israeli farms. Of course I can. But I don't live there. I don't have to live under those circumstances. I don't have to provide for my family in Palestine. I don't have to live under occupation. So for me, I can say those things sitting in a democratic country that is England. But I'm afraid that's a real different position for those farmers living there. And actually, again, I come back to my other point. Go to Palestine. Speak to the people who work on Israeli farms and Palestinian farms. Find out the information. You know, let me just throw something back to yourself just for a moment. If you're offered a job by Company A and Company B, Company A is Muslim owned, Company B is non-Muslim owned, and you're getting more money in Company B, and money is driving you. But you know Company B, the non-Muslim owned, isn't as ethical as the Muslim owned company. What do? You make a decision. It's your decision. And if your decision is I go for Company B, that's your decision. I'd like to encourage people to go for Company A, but you need to look at your own personal circumstances. So it's not so black and white. It is a challenging question, and it requires people's personal circumstances to be considered. And everybody has their own level of personal circumstance to consider. So for me, yes, I'd want the ethical route, but maybe I'm saying that because I'm sat here in the comfort of England.
We know that many Palestinian shop owners within Palestine stock Israeli date brands. Why do they do this? And should that make us reconsider our purchasing strategy of dates?
It's a really good question. When I travel to Palestine, my base is generally in East Jerusalem, in the Old City. And you'll generally be within the Muslim quarter. In the Muslim quarter, by definition, most of the shop owners or stall owners are Muslim. Many of them sell Israeli branded dates. When you speak to them, they're a little taken aback that many Muslims in the UK and beyond won't buy Israeli dates, because they don't understand why that is the case. They see it very differently. First of all, they say that this whole country is one. So whether you buy this brand of dates or this brand of dates, they are the same. So that's an answer we've had from several people I've spoken to. Secondly, one of the difficulties is getting Palestinian dates into, for example, Jerusalem. So goods moving from the West Bank into Jerusalem is in itself a challenge. It's a logistical challenge. I know, as an example, when I have guests of mine who want to buy dates in Palestine, it's this thing that even though we sell them here and they don't have to impact their luggage allowance when they're traveling back from Palestine, they want to bring a box of dates back from Palestine. So I will then try to organize for dates to move, for example, from Jericho into Jerusalem. It's not easy to do because of the checkpoints involved. And when the Israeli authorities look in the boot of your car or whatever it may be, and you're carrying goods which clearly are for commercial purposes, it can create difficulties for the person who's bringing those goods. So many of the Muslim-owned shops in the old city sell dates for two reasons. And I'm no expert, but the two reasons that I've been given over the 10 years I've been traveling. One, because they see the whole country as one, and number two, that they struggle to get Palestinian dates. And that latter one, the struggle to get Palestinian dates, doesn't come up very often when you ask them why they're selling Israeli dates. They rarely say that, but there's a handful who said that. And you'll be shocked when there are scholars of Islam who have to subsidize their scholarly work by selling products. They're selling Israeli dates. And we in this country would find that very difficult because the two wouldn't go hand in hand. You would expect a scholar of Islam here to say, support Palestine and buy Palestinian products. That isn't always the case there because there are challenges. This is in Jerusalem. So I'm not talking the West Bank, I'm talking in Jerusalem. Yes, the goods, the dates come from the West Bank, but we must understand the geography. A lot of people will jump on bandwagons without necessarily understanding how the geography works. The wall that covers or divides Jerusalem and the West Bank is really important to understand. I think the wall was built in 2008 or something, or 2010, and the Israeli government says it's built as a security measure. The reality is it's cut off many communities. It's divided Palestinian land. It's created immense difficulties. Let me just give you an example before answering your question in more detail. When I travel within Palestine, particularly when I'm on my own or I'm in small groups, I like to travel locally, catch a bus, for example, and then walk through the checkpoints. So when you walk through these checkpoints, which are of course reserved for tourists and Muslims, i.e. local Palestinians, it can be uncomfortable. I'm very fortunate I have either red or blue passports. So you tend to be just, rolled through, as it were. There's a hand gesture and off you go. But for the Palestinians, it's very different. So if the movement of people is so restricted and controlled, imagine what it's like for the movement of goods coming from the West Bank into Jerusalem. So it's really important to get the geography. Dates come from the West Bank, Jericho. They have to then move around. Most of us visit Jerusalem. Most people visit Jerusalem because of Al-Aqsa Mosque, the Dome of the Rock, and other revered Muslim sites, Christian sites, Jewish sites. So the largest tourist population, I suspect, will be into Jerusalem for those reasons. So goods coming into Jerusalem are checked and checked and checked. So that's the first thing. And secondly, as I say, many of the Palestinian shop owners take the view that their dates, it's one country and we should sell them. So, and that's very uncomfortable for us in the UK to accept and take on board for the reasons I've already highlighted.
Have you found Palestinians in the UK have the same attitude to that, or do they adopt more of our approach?
I don't know too many Palestinians in the UK, if I'm honest. I've met a handful. Of the ones I've met, some of them have a very blasé attitude. Others are very vocal and supportive. So I think wherever you go, you can find your people for whatever cause you want to say. I think the irony is when you go into Palestine itself, both the West Bank and Jerusalem, you speak and meet people and you get a different perspective, or you get a perspective which you may not be familiar with here, and you may not even be comfortable with, but it's a local perspective. I think, for me, one of my bugbears is that when people who live in a different country are telling people how they should work in another country, how they should operate, We don't live in whichever country it may be. We don't live in that country, we live in England. So if you want to tell me if I'm living in Pakistan or Palestine or whatever it may be in the world, how I should live, then come and live there. Come and bring your rules and your regulations and tell me if it works. And it's not like that. So it is really important to understand local situations before we start to jump on a particular route, particular argument. So coming back to your first question, and the question as it was, local people in the old city selling Israeli dates, yes, many of them. Many, many, many. And they sell them because they're the ones that they can A, access, and B, they're much cheaper as well, by the way. The Palestinian dates are generally a little bit more expensive, usually sometimes 25% more expensive. And times in Palestine, as we all know, are very difficult, not just now because of the ongoing massacre, they're difficult anyhow, because most of the old city of Jerusalem relies upon tourism. And whenever there's conflict, naturally, it impacts people's attitudes and behaviors to travel to Palestine. So of course that has an impact upon the street traders, on the traders. And the old city of Jerusalem is a beautiful place to visit for all. This is not for Muslims, Christians and Jews, this is for everybody. And we should all go and embrace it because it's a beautiful place. Just like we freely mix here with so many different races, religions, creeds and cultures, you go there, you really feel that welcome. It is just beautiful. It's such a lovely experience. And then ask the questions yourself. You know, rather than relying upon people who sit here in the UK, ask the shopkeepers, do interviews like you're doing now, and ask them why they do this and why and I think you'll be shocked because of what we think sitting here in the UK, and maybe surprised, but at least you'll understand it better.
What would be your advice to people who wish to visit and travel to Palestine? What would you tell them to do, what not to do? How can they be wise about it, and where should they go and visit?
Most importantly, go with trusted travel companies. It's really important. I talked about buying products from trusted people, trusted organizations. It's the same rule. You know, when you buy something, you tend to look at, I don't know, Trustpilot as an example. You know, that might give you an insight. If you book something as a hotel, you look at the reviews. So do the same. Look at people or organizations that provide these tours. I mentioned to you, we've been providing tours since 2014 to Palestine. I pride myself on ensuring the tours run as efficiently as they can. We don't overpromise, but I think often it's said we over-deliver, and that's a nice place to be in. Where do you visit? We put beautiful itineraries together. So our plan is to travel this year, and there's a lovely itinerary. Where you'll visit, for example, where your base is, very close by to Mosque Al-Aqsa, usually within a 5-minute walk of Mosque Al-Aqsa. So you get to do most of your daily prayers in Mosque Al-Aqsa. You get the rewards and reap the benefits of that, and see the richness of the land, the hospitality of the people, all the people. Of course, we have the 3 monotheistic religions, Islam, Judaism and Christianity, whose principle, I was going to say the heart, of course, we've got Makkah, Medina for Muslims, but a principle, let's say the first Qibla for Muslims. So the importance of Palestine for Muslims and Christians and Jews. It's there for everyone to see, so visit. But go with people who are going to give you a balanced outlook. So what we do is, we take a tour group leader from the UK who'll be very well versed in the 3 cultures, the 3 religions. And then we have local guides when we go to Palestine who equally will be well versed in the 3 religions, the 3 cultures and the history. And we visit as many sites as possible, not just Muslim sites, all sites. Because the whole idea is that many of us who've grown up in England have read about certain Christian sites, certain Jewish sites and certain Muslim sites. So visit them. It's nice to see the reality that whether as a Muslim we believe X or Y, we've read about it, we've been taught about it, now you get to see it. You're an adult now, so from a young child in primary school, you're now an adult and you're seeing it. And then travel around the West Bank, it's beautiful. You know, you go to, just an example, in Ramallah, Mandela Square. You got a huge statue of Mandela, and it's just nice to visit. You see his speech when he became president, and there are so many beautiful places. And I tell you, if nothing else takes you to Palestine, the food. My goodness, the food is exceptional. It is some of the best food you'll ever eat, combined with the hospitality of the people. So if you haven't been, go. Who to go with? Trusted organizations. And again, ensure that you have pre-tour seminars. Lots of concern, lots of misinformation, lots of scare tactics taking place, why people get put off from going. I've been many times. I enjoy it. I love it. I have a great relationship with people from a variety of backgrounds, because it's important to go. And it's really important to make sure that you show your presence to all the people. And you know, we want peace for everybody. Peace only comes when we actually get off our backsides and do something. And that's why I say it's really important. Go together, go in your communities, take people and enjoy the land of Palestine. It's beautiful. The whole purpose of this discussion today and this process is to try and ensure that if you want to support Palestine, then ensure what you buy is Palestinian. I mean, that message must resonate. It sounds very basic and simple. It's not about jumping to social media and saying, oh, so-and-so's dates or products are not Palestinian. How do we know? Just because a WhatsApp message circulates or a message on Facebook circulates that says it isn't, doesn't mean it's true. And I'll give you an example. Just recently, somebody circulated that there are only 2 companies in the UK that sell genuine Palestinian dates. Now, that upset me because I wasn't one of those 2 companies. Now, I know what I do to ensure that my dates are Palestinian. So immediately on the back of that, I took a flurry of calls. Now, I've reached out to the author of that message and waiting for them to come back to me, because it's not just about sending a message. Understand your information. So if you really want to help the Palestinian people, then get the information. Because just think this through. If the message is that there's only 2 companies that provide Palestinian dates, then what about the other X who provide Palestinian dates? You're directly harming them. And by harming them, it means they can't buy further dates from Palestine. So the actual thing that you're trying to promote, which is buy Palestinian, you're indirectly and now directly harming it, because other Palestinian date providers will suffer as a result. So I come back to my point throughout the whole of this. The theme is speak, check, speak, check. Get that information and make sure you're happy with the information when you walk away.